Good Thursday morning, everyone. Welcome into today's daily Bible reading for December the 22nd. Today we are reading together in Ecclesiastes chapter 4. The first part of this chapter continues on some of the thoughts from yesterday's reading in chapter 3, and then it shifts focus a little bit to talk about the vanity or futility of some other things that people put a lot of stock in. So we're going to talk about that today here in Ecclesiastes chapter 4. I'm going to get the text up on the screen for us, and we'll get to reading here together. Actually, real fast, I keep forgetting that I want to make the font a little bigger and make it a little easier for folks to read on the screen. I think I made it smaller in something else I was doing, and I forgot to change it back. So I hope that will help be able to see that. I know the resolution comes through differently than I see it, so sometimes it's maybe a little more blurry than other times, but hopefully this right here will help it to be a little more readable. So Ecclesiastes chapter 4 and verse number 1. Here we go. Got to go back up here. Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse number 1. Again, I believe again that this is a continuation from chapter 3. Again, I observed all the acts of oppression being done under the sun. Look at the tears of those who are oppressed. They have no one to comfort them. Power is with those who oppress them. They have no one to comfort them. So I commended the dead who have already died more than the living who are still alive. But better than either of them is the one who has not yet existed, who has not seen the evil activity that is done under the sun. Verse number 4 of chapter 4, I saw that all labor and all skillful work is due to one person's jealousy of another. This too is futile and a pursuit of the wind. The fool folds his arms and consumes his own flesh. Better one handful with rest than two handfuls with effort and a pursuit of the wind. Again, I saw futility under the sun. There is a person without a companion, without even a son or brother, and though there is no end to all his struggles, his eyes are still not content with riches. Who am I struggling for this, he asks, and depriving myself of good things? This too is futile and a miserable task. Two are better than one because they have a good reward for their efforts. For if either falls, his companion can lift him up. But one falls without another to lift him up. Also, if two lie down together, they can keep warm. But how can one person alone keep warm? And if someone overpowers one person, two can resist him. A cord of 3 strands is not easily broken. Better is a poor but wise youth than old but foolish king who no longer pays attention to warnings. For he came from prison to be king, even though he was poor, or even though he was born poor in his kingdom. I saw all the living who move about under the sun follow a second youth who succeeds him. There is no limit to all the people who were before them, yet those who come later will not rejoice in him. This too is futile and a pursuit of the winds. And that is Ecclesiastes chapter 4. So going back up here to the opening portion of the chapter, again, if we get back into chapter 3, beginning verse 16, I observed under the sun there's wickedness at the place of judgment, there's wickedness at the place of righteousness. This probably needs to be understood as there is wickedness in what ought to be the rightly carried out justice system, although that's not the case. There is wickedness at the place of righteousness. Probably understand this as a place of worship. There should be justice at the place of worship, but instead there is wickedness. And I said to myself, God will judge the righteous and the wicked, since there is a time for every activity, every work. So though he sees this, he understands that there is going to be an accountability to those who do what is wrong. But then it takes this really kind of dark turn almost in chapter 4 and verse 1. Again, I don't know if this is the best chapter break at all, because I believe it does continue on in the thoughts of what is taking place in the end of chapter 3. Again, I observed all the acts of oppression done under the sun. Look at the tears of those who are oppressed. They have no one to comfort them. Power is with those who oppress them. They have no one to comfort them. It's just a reality. Unfortunately, it should not be. Yet in a world that is marred by sin and wickedness and depravity, where you're going to see oppression. You're going to see those who have power use that power to oppress those who are without power. That's simply a reality of it. And it's an unfortunate reality. But again, that doesn't mean that we should accept that or we should be okay with that. We should be a people, again, reading through Proverbs, reading here in Ecclesiastes, I believe is very obvious that we ought to be people who are compassionate towards those who are oppressed. But here's the dark. So I commended the dead who have already died more than the living who are still alive. But better than either of them is the one who has not yet existed, who has not seen the evil activity that is done under the sun. That's the framework we work through, though, is that end of verse 3, the activity that is done under the sun. Remember that we're reading this for the most part through the lenses of life under the sun. Whenever we consider what's going on here, and we consider it purely from a natural perspective, purely from a temporal perspective, what's going on in the sun, yeah, it very much is better for those who have just never existed than have to live in this life and experience what's going on. Why would I want to live in this world where there's oppression if that's what I'm going to see and that's what I'm going to experience? Why would I want to do that? Again, that doesn't take into consideration the beauty of the world and the God glorifying aspects of the world. Again, we're looking at just through the lens of life under the sun and the oppression in it. Why would I want to experience that? The preacher says, I mean, who would want to? So moving on then to verse number 4, talks about wealth. He talked about wealth back in chapter 2, at least accumulating worth. Well, there's pleasure, there's possessions, there's work that's mentioned in chapter 2. Well, here in chapter 4, it talks about, well, what good is wealth? And really, what good is wealth is nothing if we look at a perspective of we accumulate wealth and then we pass on and our wealth is gone. If we look at it from that perspective, then there's nothing good about it. Also, if all we care about is wealth and we don't pursue relationships, that also is a very negative way to live life. I think about here in the Christmas season, I think about Ebenezer Scrooge, of the Christmas story, I believe it is, where he's a rich man, has all the wealth in the world, but doesn't care about people. He's neglected people. And what a lonely way that is to live life. Beginning verse 7, it emphasizes the good of relationships, especially, again, talking about holiday season. It is especially good during the holiday season for us to make sure about our relationships, to ensure that we are giving time and attention to those who we love and care about and who support us in everything that we're doing. Sorry, this is 2 days in a row. My mic's kind of been a little finicky. There we go. We should be, especially during this time, this is a time of joy. We should pursue spending time with those that we love right now. And you talk about the good of companionship, the good of relationship. A person without a companion, even without even a brother, a son or brother, even and though there is no end to his struggles, his eyes are still not content with riches. He has all the riches, it seems. He's not content with it. He doesn't have relationships. This too is futile and a miserable task. 2 is better than 1 because they have a good reward for their efforts. If one falls, another can lift him up. 2 lie down together, they can keep themselves warm. If someone overpowers 1, 2 can resist him. A cord of 3 strands is not easily broken. We need to value relationships, and we need to seek to cultivate relationships, especially this is true whenever it comes to if we're making a decision between wealth and relationships. Again, wealth is so fleeting, but relationships is what this life is all about, I believe. Believe that's what life is all about. I mean, God created us to be communal people, and we need to make sure that we are investing in that community, especially true within the church. And within our local spiritual families, we should be investing in those relationships. We should be cultivating those relationships. We should be taking advantage of those relationships and allow those relationships that are bound by spiritual means. We need to make sure those are strong and healthy and being supplied, that we again are investing in them and enjoying the fruit that comes from that. And then finally, within this chapter, beginning of verse 13, it's about political power, how political power itself is hevel. It is futile. It is pursuit of the wind. You might have power for a little bit, but that power is never going to be absolute. It's never going to be unending. Eventually, there's going to be somebody that comes after you, and they're going to have the power, and your name is going to be forgotten. So we think about this chapter. We think about things that people pursue. We think about pursuing wealth, pursuing political power. It's futile. It is hevel. It is a pursuit of the wind. It's never going to be fulfilling. What brings fulfillment in this life is relationships with other people and investing in other people, considering other people, as Paul would say later on, more important than ourselves, and enjoying the fruit of the good relationships that God has blessed us with. So I hope we'll think about those things today. And I hope that we will, over the next few days, as we spend time in the holiday season, that we will spend time with loved ones. And hey, if you're away from loved ones, not able to be with them, reach out to somebody in your church family, reach out to us. We'd love to spend some time with you and to encourage you during this holiday season. We want for our church family to feel the blessing of community. And if we can help with that, please let that be known. Hope that you enjoy the rest of this Thursday, and we'll be back at it again tomorrow. Hopefully none of the crazy weather that has been somewhat predicted will come to fruition. Hopefully everybody will be able to be safe in their travels over the next few days. And again, spending time with family and enjoying this wonderful holiday season. Thanks for tuning in again. We'll be back at it again tomorrow from chapter 5 of Ecclesiastes.